Welcome back to Lenders Gone Wild podcast. I'm your host, Matt Meyer. Just wanted to take a few minutes and set the stage for our guest, Eric Mazza, in the house with us today. Lenders Gone Wild is just a place for us to come tell stories, to hear Eric's story, to understand what the journey in this crazy mortgage and real estate industry is like, and then hear some of the really wild stories that really you only experience if you do this job over an extended period of time. So, without further ado, Eric Mazza, our regional business development leader. Is that right, Eric?
That's it. Director of business development for Clear, Arizona.
Okay, so you're at Clear Mortgage right now?
Correct.
And how long have you been in our industry?
So industry, I started off mortgages around 2011 actually with Bank of America, doing loan modifications of all things, but I originally got licensed in 2015. So
no one was licensed in 2011.
Yeah, no one was. They didn't even have it back then. That was the Wild West. But yeah, so 2011 is really where I cut my teeth with a lot of the loan modifications, especially coming from Countrywide. So we were doing the tune of, I would say, a couple hundred loan modifications a month.
Wow.
And we really got to see kind of the ugly side of what...
Yeah, I mean, Countrywide is like the poster child for the subprime disaster, right? Like...
It created kind of the mess that we were in. So at the end of the day, like we really got to see behind the scenes of what all those applications look like. And we actually got to talk to the homeowners and, giving them options and whatnot. And a lot of them you just felt bad for. Yeah. But yeah, and in 2015, when obviously the market corrected a little bit, that's when I got my license. And that, in fact, it was my manager back from 2011 from Bank of America that reached out to me and originally was like, hey, what are you doing nowadays? And I just said, hey, I'm keeping my options open right now. He's like, you've got to come into origination. You've got to come. I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to originate. Yeah. I have no idea, like, how do you even do the licensing? So yeah, it was fun. And he laid it all out. It was great.
Where did you originate at? Where did you get yours?
Movement Mortgage.
Okay.
Movement Mortgage. And honestly, that was a blessing. Like, I think back now, especially with all the loan officers that I've met over the last decade, and I'm thinking to myself, man, that could have gone just horribly wrong. I could have gone anywhere else. But I actually was pretty blessed. I had a great mentor that I got to sit down with, literally in a box, maybe like 8x8. And he allowed me to kind of pick his brain. He was a senior loan officer, one of the top in the country with Movement.
Awesome.
And I just sat in there for, hours a day. And it was just like, I was an LOA, but almost like a gopher too. Like, hey, like, can you go get these open house signs? Can you go do this? Can you go, talk to this agent for me real quick? So I really got to learn all aspects of the business, if you will.
Yeah. I started as a LOA 14. And that was the greatest like learning thing that I could do is sit under great LOs and then great processing and underwriting in house and just learn, sponge, man. That's awesome. Yeah. How'd your career kind of evolve into the business development side? Tell me a little bit about like where we went from learning the ropes in 2015 to where we are today.
No, that's great. So what's funny is, and looking back, you can always see where and again, faith runs big in my house as well.
Okay, awesome.
And at the end of the day, it's like you can really see where God was kind of like putting together the blueprint, if you will.
Sure.
So one of my first jobs, literally in my early 20s, was really business development in technology. This was like during the dot-com, so I'm going to age myself a little bit. So, right? Dot-com boom, you have a ton of companies that are trying to buy just all kinds of hardware and whatnot for their businesses. And so there I am, 20s, and they're basically just saying, hey, we want you to call these companies, and we want you to sell them contracts on 7-figure IT budgets for anything from laptops all the way to servers.
Okay.
And that's... Now, again, I've been kind of in call center environments before that, but I never talked to like C-level executives and like these are CTOs that you're talking to and you're trying to sell. And I basically cut my teeth becoming like a business development guy in not only IT, but then in telecom later on, and really just fell in love with the world of marketing and really fell in love with the idea of not only sales, but the idea of I can put together an entire solution for a company and really assimilate these very technical aspects into kind of common sense language.
I love that.
Like, here's how this very complicated, complex solution is actually going to bring your company value day one, right? And so when I was at Movement, we were actually fortunate enough to be housed within Keller Williams, and great brokerage. They do a lot with recruiting. They do a lot with bringing on brand new agents. And I'm kind of overhearing, like in the office, I'm overhearing a lot of the same kind of objections and kind of the same challenges. Like, how do we get leads? How do we talk to leads? How do we overcome this and that? So what I did was I basically just went to the team lead and said, hey, do you mind if I put together some classes? Do you mind if I put together, some training? Like, and again,
Sure.
Doesn't have to be anything official. And I'm just going to see who shows up. I think maybe like 2 or 3 people showed up at the very beginning, right? And then, but you get the passerbys, you get the people who are like walking by, and you're like, hey, and then they stand, and they're like, I kind of like this.
Well, you're actually adding value, right? Like it's how many classes you walk by, and it's just like obligatory room filling.
Or it's CE, right?
Yeah.
So that's...
Everybody loves CE.
Everybody. Some of the most riveting, those guys, party guys. But at the end of the day, it's like, you end up finding out that when an agent gets their license, they don't teach them how to actually do the business, or find the business. And that's where I felt like, wow,
so you kind of got into like the coaching side of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, the excitement and seeing their eyes light up and just like, I'm getting it now. Like, I don't feel like I'm just wasting my day trying to find random business, and I actually have a plan. I actually have a system. That was incredibly gratifying to see, and getting that feedback. It was incredible.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, right, what would you say kind of your biggest accomplishment or one of those like pinnacles of success that you've experienced in your career?
Oh my gosh. Okay. In my career, immediately, because I always want to default to like that question, it's just to my children and just like being a dad and whatnot, right?
Love that, dude. Right? Yeah. And it doesn't have to be professional, I guess, right? Like hit both for me. Give me the personal and the professional.
So, and then real quick too, like today's also like my son's birthday, my oldest son's birthday.
Oh.
So just happy birthday, Elias.
Hey, happy birthday, Elias.
Cheers, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, so he's turning 24 today, which is wild to think. And again, aging myself, so those playing at home can do math. 24. I was actually a dad at 21.
Wow.
I was a young dad, and that's kind of what forced me into being a professional and kind of this consummate professional, and kind of leaving behind like the days of like, roommates and parties and whatnot, and just saying, you know what, I actually have a life that I'm responsible for.
Sure.
I have to have more than one piece of furniture in my house that isn't
changes
a table.
Everything, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, quickly.
And I have to have actual food in the fridge. I can't just have takeout. And I always tell my kids. So I have 3 kids. Elias, 24, my middle guy, Aiden, who's 18, gonna be 19 here in about a week, and then Audrey, my little girl. I say little, but she's gonna be 16 or 15 here shortly. And I was thinking to myself, the 24-year-old, my oldest, I wasn't a dad before he was born, right? With my other 2, I was a dad. Like they got the experience, the actual. But with my oldest, he actually was the reason that I became a dad. And so, fortunately enough, he was like kind of like my ride or die. He experienced the journey, right?
He's seen it all.
Yeah, like version 1 of being a dad. Like there's no handbook.
Yeah.
I was an only child, so I didn't have siblings. My parents, I was like the prototypical like 80s latchkey kid. So like, single mom kind of raised me, and so she wasn't really home a lot. So here I am, like, man, what do I know how to be a dad? And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try to do the right thing. I'm not always gonna get it right, but at the end of the day, like that was my biggest accomplishment of like, now I have my kids. My kids have always been with me pretty much full time, and it's like that's my biggest accomplishment is like literally raising him and turning him into the man he is today. Like
I love
that's
that,
a huge one for me.
Yeah. Right. That's way bigger than any plaques or
like
certificates on the wall.
That's what like I lay my head down at night and it's like if today was it, if today was the last day, like okay, cool, I did a good job, according to the values and standards and morals that I want to live by and that I want to instill into my kids. Professionally though, like now I do want to get into professional a little bit. At the end of the day, like I've always been this serial entrepreneur, but in like a W-2 world. right? Like at the end of the day, I always go into a new organization and immediately I'm just looking at like, how can I solve these systems?
Right.
How can I just flow chart everything
And pay taxes.
Right, and pay taxes, being the highest tax bracket. But at the end of the day, it's like, and I always get criticism for this too, right? When I walk in, it's like, bro, like slow down, learn our business first before you try to reinvent it.
Sure.
And I just could never grasp that. I always saw opportunities. I always saw this kind of these antiquated models, and not just one vertical, but every vertical, like every industry, right? Like it's almost like we're operating like almost with a stagecoach mentality, with like, imagine if you went back 100 years ago, 200 years ago with a cell phone, and just the idea of like showing people and trying to introduce and telling people like, hey, there's a better way. Hey, there's a better way to do things. That's kind of the way I look at every industry. It's like this idea of like, wow, I can't believe we're still doing this way. And I'm almost mad that I can't be here like 200 years from now just to see how this all plays out. So biggest accomplishment was like,
it's just going to be AI running everything.
Right. And
everything.
I'm here for it. I'm excited. And I know it could go either way too. And so I'm hoping the powers that be are responsible enough to actually ensure that it's being led the right way. But long answer, short question, at the end of the day, it's like my biggest accomplishment is still being here, being present and trusting that God has a plan and there's a process, and that I didn't just flame out, early on because I was just so like, I've always felt no matter what, I win either way, right? I win either way. And if one door closes, and it's super cliche, another one does open, but I am also, it's not necessarily that I don't have direction because like that I can't direct myself, but if I know that if I can stay true to kind of this plan that God has in place, then I can go ahead and just ensure, and again, kind of blindly, and like in this cloud of just confusion and whatnot, know that it's going to be okay. That's where I'm really getting at, is that it's going to be okay with just this cloud.
Yeah, there's a faith element to it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great, man. And I think, we've all been through that, right? I remember when I first started in the business, it was like, I would literally like pray as I'm walking to the underwriter's office, like, God, whatever I'm learning from this, like, let it not hurt somebody, right? Like, let me learn this industry. Let me make mistakes. Let me, kind of be able to connect some dots without somebody else being impacted negatively, right?
Because this is huge. Like you're dealing with somebody's house, like they're not only their biggest purchase of their lives, but also like this is their shelter.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many things that could go wrong, and that kind of gives you the gravitas of what we do on a daily.
Yeah, it's not just. I mean, it is the greatest wealth generation tool. Like
sure.
The Bitcoin people might argue with us, right? But right,
history though, averages,
over the long run,
right?
But it's more than that, right? This is a place of safety and consistency and predictability for families, and,
exactly.
Right? Like it's their dwelling, it's their safety.
Yeah, their home.
Right, exactly. So, it's more than just like pulling off the creation of wealth financial transaction, right? Like, there's a lot more to it. So, like, it's big.
At the end of the day, like I think we kind of get, especially if you've been in this industry for a long time, you get desensitized to the numbers. Mm-hmm. Right, you see a jumbo come through, you're like, oh, cool, 1.5 mil or 2 mil, and we're so used to these big numbers. But at the end of the day, like, there's a real family behind
every one of
that
those numbers,
address, right? That loan, that signature at closing, when you actually get to hand the keys to somebody or be part of that experience. We used to go to a lot of title closings and just be present. Obviously, we want the realtor and the agent to get the glory, and they're obviously the single point of contact. But we're kind of like the unsung heroes in the background, to make sure some of these hairy files actually get to go through, right? Like, which could be messy.
Well, and sometimes it's not just your buyers, right, from us on the mortgage side, but it's the sellers or the sellers of the house, right? It's two and three dominoes sometimes of, right, because we cared for a family in this transaction, there are multiple families impacted by the real estate dominoes. Absolutely. That in the financial family, dynamics that come with that in the way it changes lives is really,
I think
pretty cool sometimes to be like, to take a step back and go,
wow,
we're a part of this.
Right.
We're not just chasing these items on the checklist or these timelines that we're accountable to, but like
it was a multi-trade deal. It's like in the NBA, there's 3 or 4 teams involved. And if one of those pieces doesn't fall correctly, the whole thing goes.
Mark Williams fails a physical, right? All of a sudden, like the thing falls apart.
Yeah, it's done. And it's amazing. Like it could go that easy. And it's like, it's incredible when, like, to your point, when you step back and you're like, wow, like that was incredibly complex. And there's a lot of families that are happy tonight to have it just be done with it.
Yep. Yeah. And then agents and professionally, the people that you get to work with and the impacts you have on their lives. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the, maybe 1 or 2, biggest learning opportunities or temporary defeats that you've experienced along the way?
I'll tell you what. So personally, there was a few. I would say one of the biggest impacts was the loss of my father. So I was really close with my dad. My dad was pretty much the smartest guy I ever known. Like he was my mentor. I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with him because my parents got divorced, and so the time that I did get, we were literally like instead of being a kid that would go to like football games, like we would go to seminars. Like I remember, like my dad took me to go see like Zig Ziglar and like Brian Tracy.
There you go.
In like 5th grade. Right?
I love that.
Like he would take me out of school and say, "Hey, we're actually going to go get some real education." He lived at the public library, and so the public library was literally like my playground where I would and the huge one downtown. Okay. He would just let me roam, and I'm thinking back now, like, oh my gosh, I would never let my kids roam at like 11 or 12 just through the hallway. Like that thing was a building, massive building. But when I, and it happened suddenly, it happened fast, right? It was like all of a sudden.
How old are you?
So 2018, he passed, and like to this day, like I could still remember it, like it was yesterday, and it's like all of a sudden you get this call, like your dad's in the hospital, right? Your dad's in ICU. Yeah, and it's like, oh my, like what happened? Immediately drive down there. And you see all these symptoms, and you talk to doctors though, and they're telling you like, okay, like here's our plan of action here. And so, one thing about me is whenever there's a subject or something that I want to master, I just dive into it. So I literally learned everything about the heart. I learned everything I could. Like I wanted to have very high level conversations with the doctor. I didn't want them to just pacify me and say, we're doing everything we can. We're going to make sure. No, it's like, what are these levels at? What are this at? What is this? And and it happened so fast. And immediately, I think the shock of it all I didn't grasp at first until like a couple of weeks later and a month later. And then I was like, this void that just absolutely occupied every other thought where there shouldn't or should have been, what's my week look like? What's my schedule look like? And instead, it's like there's this boulder, right, that's on you. Wow. And from there, it was, again, leaning into faith and just saying, okay, I don't know why this happened. I don't know what my next move is. And I'm just going to trust. And I'm just going to, instead of planning everything 10 moves ahead, just one step, right? And that was really the biggest challenge, and kind of how I got through that was like, I'm just going to one step at a time, one day at a time. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, and now, those tiny steps, they add up to this incredible journey. And I think he would have been really proud the way I handled it, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, a huge life event and setback. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, massive role in my life. And again, here's the funny thing too, is, you don't realize like how, like sometimes we take this for granted, and we take those relationships and we see, dad show up on our caller ID, and we're just like, okay. And right. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, what I wouldn't give to see that on my caller ID one more time. Right. Like, amazing. So,
oh man, I love that. It's a good reminder, I think, for all of us, right? Like, tell the people you love that you love them, and spend time and make time for
Absolutely.
what really matters.
Absolutely.
Right? Whether that's kids, spouse, parents,
Anyone who's close to you, like
anybody,
anyone
right?
who's like just
dude.
touched your life, added value in some way, just reach out like, hey, you know what? I appreciate you. Like, I appreciate you. It's been a while since we've last talked. I just want to check in and see how you're doing. If there's anything that I can do, but I just want to hear your voice.
That's so powerful.
Right? Like,
So powerful,
simple.
right? Like, I'm guilty, right? Got the
We all
kids, got the job.
Yeah.
It's real easy to like
easy.
dodge mom and dad's phone call. It's real easy to
Like I'll call them back.
right? Like, put this or that to the side, right? Or how many times do I catch myself telling my kids like, just a minute,
Yeah.
not right now, hold on, after whatever, right? And it's like, man,
That's it.
all those little moments that are so easy to miss.
Exactly. And sometimes it does take just this incredible impactful moment to just like kind of remind you. And something we all need to be shaken up, like just a little bit of like, hey, like, tomorrow's not promised, right?
Amen.
Like, so at the end of the day, it's like, just being aware, I think, is just kind of like 50% of it. And then the actual execution application of that. So
It's your dad.
yeah, cheers. Absolutely.
What are you drinking?
I think we have a little Makers. This is one of my personal favorites, or an old-fashioned maker.
Yeah. Yeah. Slender's gone wild, so there's going to be cocktails.
It's the way it should be. At the end of the day,
I mean, listen, we're talking about the mortgage business, right? It kind of fits.
you need to let loose.
Yeah.
There needs to be some balance.
Yeah.
You can't all be spreadsheets,
Yeah. Guidelines.
right? And guidelines.
Guidelines and apps. So we've talked a little bit about, right, some of the success, some of the journey, some of the challenges along the way. How do you define like success? Like, what's the end game? The like, I've arrived. Like, what does that look like for you?
I love that. One mantra that's really big in my house is design your life. Design your life unapologetically. Here's what I want to be. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I want my future self to look like. And I don't owe anyone an explanation, right? Like that is a complete sentence. Here's who I am.
Yeah.
And success in my point is, can I add value to others? Can I live by my values, my standards, my ethics, my morals, right? And I think the first part before you even design your life is, do you understand what those mean to you? Do you understand if somebody asked you, well, what are your standards? What are your values? What are your morals, your ethics, right? And then from there, and it's almost like that old cliche, it's like, you have to stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, it's success is, can I live life on my own terms? If I need to take my kids to the hospital or to urgent care, do I need to ask somebody for permission? Do I need to ask for time off, right? And again, that was the W-2 kind of mentality of like, what happens if my kids get sick?
Not anymore.
Right, not anymore.
Yeah.
But like back in the day, it was like, and again, that was what I realized, and then again from my dad, was that it wasn't necessarily entrepreneurship that I was chasing. It was more or less the freedom and the autonomy, right? To be my own individual without asking permission.
Yeah, that's
Right?
so good, dude.
That's it.
So good.
And it's like, I don't want to ask another human being if I can stop what I'm doing to go take care of my kids, right? So am I going to put myself in a position where I can? And, ultimately...
Somebody else doesn't control your priorities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's success, right? And am I in a position where now I can design my life? I can live with intention. I can add value to not only my family, but those closest to me. And if I'm able to do those things consistently, and then potentially even at scale, that's success. Like, that's what that means.
I love that.
Yeah.
Man, I think, again, that's right. It's keeping the right thing in the right perspective.
Focus and intention.
Yeah.
Right. And it's you almost, one thing I love that you brought up at our last event was the gratitude reminders.
Yeah.
It's huge. And one thing that I like to do, and I heard this from a podcast a long time ago, it's like, if your kids hung out with you all day, would they be proud of the work that you're doing? And then could you lay your head down on your pillow at night and say, you know what, I'm proud of the work I did today, right? Like, I got it done today.
Yeah.
And then can you also go in tomorrow with like, I know what the game plan is tomorrow. And then can you just do that every day, right? Like that, and it sounds so simple,
Yeah.
But simple doesn't mean easy.
How often we talk about consistency,
Right?
right? Like in sales, right? It's
And that's it.
hard.
It's building that routine. And
Yeah.
it is hard.
Well, right, because there's on the other side of the freedom coin is balancing discipline.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you can go get a job or you can quit your job. Like, I'm not saying any of you should quit your job. You could quit your job, especially if you have an open escrow. Don't quit your job.
Right.
Right? But
Let's close first.
You could quit your job and you could go pick a self-employed avenue, right? Technically, that's a choice everyone has to create freedom. But if you don't possess the discipline along with that, the freedom actually ends up being just a different type of bondage, right?
Exactly.
It's not actually freedom. It is, right, just your yoke of undisciplined living.
You're exactly right.
Right? So there's that rub that everybody looks at, right? Especially we deal with real estate agents all the time, right? And everyone looks at it and goes, oh, I can go do that. Look at this guy's podcast. Look at this guy's success. Look at how much
They're
money.
always out partying. They're always out doing an event. No.
No, man, there's so much that goes into that.
So
How
much.
like, I know that, like, I remember coming up with Ben in our time together, right? And people would join the team and they'd be like, they weren't there for the ride that got us to a place where they were even eligible to be hired, right?
Right.
But they would be like, oh, look at, that success or that money or that lifestyle, right? And it's like, oh, but you weren't here for the you weren't here for the grind.
There's work.
You weren't here for the 100-hour weeks and the answering your phone at all times and stepping away from special events with your wife or your kids in order to make sure that you were available to serve people, right? Like
The cost of membership.
you weren't here for that.
Yeah.
Like you didn't get to experience that. There's still a path for you. If you want that life, you have to do that work,
Amen.
right?
That's it.
And that's the challenge. I think a lot of people in our space, right? Whether on mortgages or real estate, right? Like,
Or any independent contractor, it's commission only.
and that's why you see the numbers down, right?
Yeah.
The number of licensees that renewed in mortgage are down. The number of licensees that renew in real estate are down because
Mass
the last couple of
exodus.
years, the job's been harder,
Yeah.
right? Like 2020, you could get a license, show up to any number of place that was stocking loan officers, and you could do loans.
Easily.
Anybody.
Yeah. It was fishing a bro.
It's not that way anymore.
No.
Right? Which is actually, right, there's good and bad with that.
Yeah.
So, your point though about freedom, right, really reminds me of something we've started doing it's kind of part of, right, our regional kind of ethos, right, our MO, right? Yes, you have your corporate values and your company vision and these things that are really important for leadership inside of a team or an organization. But I think what often gets missed is the work to really understand the individual, whether it's LO or agent or entrepreneur that you are in partnership with, understanding their values, their why, their vision for their career, right? And so
huge.
like, if I don't know that, how do I best support and lead you? How do I come alongside an agent who I don't know what their goals are in their career? How do I take a loan officer and help them achieve the next thing if I'm not sure what that is?
Man,
right?
You hit
it's
it.
like there's so much freedom that like sometimes it's really easy to just plug them in and like the guys who get it will figure it out, right? But what about all the people that need pointing in a direction, need a tool, need a first step provided for them, etc., so that they can go run and do the things that they want to?
You're exactly right. And that's not only sales 101, but at the end of the day, like I almost want to get rid of the word sales altogether.
Yeah.
Where it's, imagine your doctor. Imagine your doctor literally, and you go in for the appointment. And before they ask you any questions, no blood pressure, no nothing. They just start hawking pills, right? They're like, hey, we got this.
Wait, isn't that how it works?
Right, right, in some
No?
places.
Didn't we just talk about pharma before this, right?
Like, they're like, I got this 50%, 2-for-1 special
Yeah.
right now. And you're just like, whoa, time out. I just came here just for an annual checkup. And he's like, no. But these pills, we got to get them off the shelf. They're hot, right? And at the end of the day, I think a lot of us kind of forget where I'm not trying to sell you anything.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if I'm even a good fit, if I'm even a good match,
Yes.
if what I have to offer is actually what you need. And the only way I can determine that is if I ask a lot of good questions. I'm able then to kind of visualize, okay, here's where you're at, here are the gaps. Okay, here's what I have that could potentially fill this gap, and here's what that could look like. Now, does this bring you value?
Yeah, you're talking about mindset, right?
Exactly.
It starts with mindset. It's not having that scarcity mindset that I have to like complete this transaction to earn a commission. Right? Like
commission breath.
That's where people get in trouble in any sales job,
Yeah.
right? We see it obviously in our industry as well. I remember back when I was exploring getting into this space, a buddy of mine who owns a brokerage over in Gilbert, actually, he said like, there's more than enough business for everybody.
Abundance.
Right? And it's like, that stuck with me this whole time because it was like, and we've never worked together, but like, we'll bounce things off each other once in a while, but it's just a great mindset to have when it comes to, if I understand what value I bring, I can best serve you by not trying to be everything to everybody and trying to just make a sale, right? I'm not trying to find your pain point and then answer it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're talking because you want to try to buy a home, right? Or your family's in some sort of financial situation. You need a cash out refi. You need to refinance to save money, right? You need to sell and not sure what to buy. You want to add to your real estate portfolio for wealth generation. So you're looking to buy income generating properties, whatever your story is, right? Like,
can I add value to it?
Can I add value to it?
Right.
Right. And can I, right, do the work to position myself as an expert, as an educator, right? My background being teaching, right? Like that's a really big one for me. But right, can I do those things in a way that add actual value, don't just make sales, right? Like you can make sales by smoke mirrors and a little relational charm, right? But if you have like genuine, authentic care for people, right? And you actually, right? Like I remember when I first started, like Ben listened to me do a couple phone calls and he's like, bro, you're going to be that guy that like goes to his clients' kids' birthdays. And I was like, I hope so, right? I hope so.
That'd be cool.
Right? Like, a couple of those have kind of worked out actually, but like, that's where, it's just a matter of like how you do the job.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody has their thing that they're better at. Right. Like,
and I think that's
important to understand, right? Like I know reverse, I'm not reverse, right? I got a guy.
Right.
I got a guy. He's phenomenal, right?
Delegate to a specialist.
Why am I going to try to take on the thing that's so intricate?
Right.
Right? When I have somebody who's going to better serve that client than I am.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
It's like a primary care physician, right? Like,
yeah, now you're getting into all your medical side.
Some healthcare.
I know you got some medical stuff that you do as well.
A little bit of healthcare consulting.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, though, they know their lane, they know their role, and they're like, do I know the anatomy of a heart? Yes, I do. But would a cardiologist be a better fit in this scenario?
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's what ends up happening. And I think sometimes, especially like TVs and movies and whatnot, TV and movies, they basically show like this world of what sales looks like and kind of like used car sales. And I think the individuals who kind of think that that's what sales is, they filter themselves out.
Yeah.
They don't see long-term success. They definitely don't have a system that's duplicatable and scalable. Right. And it's the individuals who really understand, like, listen, I don't even know if I can help you, but I want to hear what you're trying to do.
Yep.
I want to hear your story. I want to hear the scenario. And then based on my expertise, I'll see if there's a position, and then I'll even show you what there's only a finite number of options that are going to happen with my service.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you determine if that's valuable to you or not.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I think, right, some of that clarity comes from, right, you have to take the steps, you have to learn, you have to grow, you have to reflect, right? And you have to be honest with yourself. You
have to love this too. You have to
love the work and the process.
You do. Otherwise, you're going to get bored or the income isn't going to be there to justify the amount of effort that you're putting into it. Like if you don't love sales, if you don't love consulting, if you don't love helping and adding value, the amount of hours that you're going to put in aren't going to feel justified. Like we spend a lot of time away from our families. We spend a lot of time away from our kids. We spend sometimes more time with each other than we do with our own families.
Sure.
And it's like, if you don't love it, then you're not going to get better. But then if you're not getting better, are you really the best person for this individual?
Well, that
for
applies
this
to
scenario?
everything, right? We're now talking way bigger than just mortgages, right? We're talking, right? This is not just a real estate industry conversation.
Exactly.
Right? That's a service professional, right? Mindset.
Exactly.
And so I think it's important, right, to know, back to your statement earlier about, right, like successes in the raising of your son, right? The raising of your kids, and what you identify, right, as the priority of what it is that you do, right? And I have to love this thing over here because of what it allows me to do over here.
Exactly.
Right? And so they have to be able to go together a little bit, and hopefully everybody finds that in life.
Yeah, that, right? Like, that's the truth. Like, you know, and never knocking W-2 at the end of the day, you know, that, right?
Hey.
But, you know, really what you're doing is you're trading time for dollars, right? It's not really scalable. There's only one of you. And unless you're working 80, 100 hours a week, there's a cap. Yeah. But when you're commission-based, when you're independent, you can think about teams. You can think about scaling. Yeah. You can think about, how do I actually recapture time? And kind of like to what you're saying, do I recapture time and then reallocate it to what's going to bring me value versus just recapturing and now having an excuse just to, you know, do whatever? No, it's like, am I doing high value tasks, and then am I delegating tasks and activities that aren't at the level where I need them to be? So, for example, if I'm making $250 or $300 an hour, I'm not going to do a 20 an hour task. I'm going to delegate.
Yeah, it's doctor nurse, right?
Exactly.
It's that same concept, right? Which is taught throughout a lot of sales industries, right? As a way of managing that and getting, right, your highest and best, or whatever the phrase that you want. There are a lot of taglines you can apply to that concept. But I think that's a great leadership point. I think, Eric, there's a lot that, right, through the ups and downs and variety of environments you put yourself in and roles that you put yourself in, you get to see, right, what really matters. You get to see, how to best provide, not just financially for your family, but provide, right, your availability so that you can be the parent you want to be. It's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Really excited. Before we close, I want to hear some of the funny tales, right? Like, give me the wild, like, right? Like I told the one before about the client that wired her. She got catfish and wired her parents gift money. I've told that one already, right? But like, tough. I also had a same day, domino. I talked about domino deals, right? Where you have the simultaneous close type of situation. And I had to get docs from like deep Santan signing that morning, right? Back to the office in Chandler.
That's a drive.
Right.
For those who don't know.
The notary, it's like, deep.
Yeah.
And the notary was like, yeah, I know, we'll get docs there when we get docs. I was like, nope. No. Not doing that, right? Because then we can't, make sure that we can fund and record, which means the next transaction can't fund and record.
And then that's on
me.
And
that's on me, right? So again, lots of lives, lots of commission checks, lots of everybody's like got some interest in us performing this morning. So I'm 8 a.m. I'm in deep Santan, bro. Deep.
Almost Florence.
These people are supposed to move out of their house today, right? And so my buyer, right, owns the current house with a seller, right? It's her and her boyfriend that own the house together, but they're splitting and he's not on my loan.
Nice.
Dude, I roll up to this house 8 a.m. Like, the yard is destroyed. There's beer cans everywhere. Like, find my way to the front door, ring the doorbell. I see the notary's car's already there. I'm like, okay, right? Ring the doorbell. Like, they let me in, right? I mean, there's big dude. I never met this guy. He's not my client, right?
You have no idea.
No idea. Never, I think I maybe talked to him once in the background when I'm, right? Huge dude, wife beater, right? Guns on the kitchen counter. We're sitting at the table. I'm not kidding.
Of course.
I'm not kidding. And it's like, he's like asking questions about the things he's signing as the seller, right? Because he's signing his seller docs, right? Yeah. And he's got to sign over the disclaimer
deed. He's already
deed.
Suspicious.
They're not officially divorced yet, so he's got to sign over the disclaimer deed.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever. Dude, it was a mess. And it's like one of those, I was like, I need you to sign faster because I got to get out. This is not how I roll. right? I'm not packing. I'm like, right? Like there's, I don't have anything against it.
I've got a Tesla outside.
Yeah, right? Like just,
Right.
I roll different,
Yeah,
right?
it's a little bit.
Yeah, right? And, but yeah, it's like, oh, now I need to go get myself a concealed permit after this one, right? So
Just in case.
Anyways, I'm sure you got some good ones.
No, I do. And for the second time, it's one good one that just comes to mind. So this was a gentleman who, oh man, it was an app that came in front of me, and I call him up and I ask him like, all right, so he's trying to do a cash out refi, and I go through all kind of like the basic intake questions of like, all right, so what are you currently in right now? He's like, oh, I'm in a 13 and a half. And I'm like, how old is this loan? He's like, we just got this a couple of years ago. And mind you, this is like 2019. And I'm like 13 and like
hard money?
That's what I'm thinking. And I'm like, is this a 2-year? Like, is this a short? And he's like, no, it's a 30-year. And I'm like, and then
who's the crook that did that?
Exactly. Immediately. And he then tells me a little bit more about his story, and he's like, I'm mentally disabled, and I live with my mom, and immediately I'm just like, man, I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna take care of you. Like, if there's a way through this, I'm going to find it.
Amen.
Right? And he's explaining, he's like, his dad just passed away.
So you had just gone through this.
Yeah. And so now I'm equally, like, I'm invested.
Mm-hmm.
And he's explained, like, my dad took care of everything. We don't really know. Like, I'm just trying, and now we've got a lot of bills piling up. And I'm like, well, how's the mortgage? Right? Immediately, like, my first question, how's the mortgage? Like, do you have any lates? He's like, no, that's the one thing we've been paying on time. I'm like, thank God. Right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm like, okay, like, and I explain, like, all right, first thing, let me go ahead and pull credit. Let me see what we're working with. Pull credit, just a bunch of just maxed out cards. Score those pretty decent. We're in the mid 6s. So in the mid 600s. And I'm thinking, okay, like, there's something here. Like, even if it's an FHA, I'll get you into an FHA, but a decent one, right? And then, we'll just refi you later on. But at the end of the day, we basically came down with a scenario where I was able to refinance them from their horrible loan into like something in like the 5s, right? 5, and if it's FHA.
And cash out?
And cash out.
No way.
Pay off all this debt. And I told them, like, hey, I want you grab pen and paper. I want you to see what we're doing. And this is something I do with all my clients. And we literally listed every debt. I'm like, the Discover, the MasterCard, everything, line by line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is what the balance is. This is what your payment was. And we're going to transfer that, and we're going to convert it all to X amount. The final was like, we were going to save them like, I think $1,800 or $1,900 a month.
Holy cow, dude. That's
everything.
Amazing.
And now, okay, but here's where it gets good.
Okay.
He's like, all right. He's like, I don't have a computer though. I'm like, okay. So, because I explained, like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a slight deposit for the
so
appraisal.
This is 2019, right? So like almost everything is like electronic.
Digital, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a fax machine.
Yeah.
Like, and so.
You don't even have paper files anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
And so he's like, I don't, because I tell him, like, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna get the appraisal. We're gonna lock this in. I'm gonna lock you in right now. We're not gonna mess around. And then we're gonna get all these docs that I need right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
take
paste up
gotta
everything.
get it done. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
One call. But I'm like, first thing I have to do though is I have to send disclosures. I have to get you to e-sign these. And he's like, I don't know how to do that. He's like, I don't even have a computer. And so immediately I'm on Google Maps and I'm like, okay, there is a library 1.7 miles away from you. Do you know that? He's like, oh yeah, that's right down the street. Perfect. We're going to go down there. And I don't want you to hang up. Like, can you drive there right now? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure I can. Okay. Right. So I hear him walking.
Take care of business right now.
He's getting keys. I hear like the janitor keys like rattling around. And then I hear this like the sound of a 68 like Ford pickup like that door. And I'm like, okay, he's in the car, and then he's in the truck, and then he drives down there. And he's like, all right, now what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, find a computer. He's like, all right, I found one. He's like, there's 2. He's like, someone's at another one. I'm like, all right, sit down. We're gonna go through this. And all of a sudden, he's like, how do I turn this on? How do I navigate? I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, look around. Is there a front desk? Is there somebody sitting there?
All we need you to do is get into email, bro. And like, it's easy from there.
And he's like, I see a lady. Yeah. I'm like, go to her and ask her for help.
Yeah.
In fact, put me on speaker, right? So he's walking, and I'm like, ma'am, I know you don't know me, you don't know this gentleman, but we need a huge favor.
Yeah. Right.
And so she's so sweet. The clients are from Indiana. They're just the best people out there. And she's like, yeah, I'll help.
So this is out of state, right?
Yeah,
like
out of state.
You can't.
I can't even go down there, even if I
yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah.
And they have me on speaker. She doesn't know computers that much more than he does either. Needless to say, we spent about 6 hours.
Stop it.
6 hours. Docs, right? Because every page, even with somebody who has a computer, sometimes it's like, hey, you missed a box. Well, which page? Well, there's 140 pages, like, right? There's a lot of boxes. We're going to have to click next until it takes you to the empty one. So it was that process. But when it was all said and done, we got it done. And man,
You had to create a Gmail or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Like you just literally like starting at zero.
At zero.
I love
And
it.
when we closed, though, he called me back, and you could hear almost the tears of like, we were weeks away from letting the house go.
Yeah. Right. Like
And
things were bad.
Yeah, things were bad. And he's like, I just want to thank you.
Yeah.
And man, a small loan too, 80,000. Like,
Yeah. It's not.
It's not even about that. But at the end of the day, it's like, I would, if it took another 10 hours, right, I would have done it. Like, I was like, this is going to happen. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what's going to happen.
I feel like that's something that we see in our business, right?
Yeah.
Is that like the tenacity to win,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not about the size of the check.
At all.
It's not about even the commission, right? Like, yeah, we want to take care of our families, but at the end of the day, it's like I can get something done that makes a difference for you.
Yeah. And immediately when you heard, like, and I would like to think like the majority of the people in our industry would have done the exact same thing. But like when I get a client on the phone, I'm thinking to myself, like, not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but it's like, I'm glad that I could serve you, and you're actually lucky that you have me because I'm going to get this done, right? If it can get done, it's gonna get done. Period. In the story.
Yeah.
Right. And so when he called back up, I was like, man, that melted me.
Yeah.
I was like, that was
good.
amazing.
Yeah. Wild transaction though.
Oh, oh my gosh. There's plenty of hair pulling.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is there was guys around me that were even looking at me like, man, just like, are you on the same call? And I'm just like, bro, like, listen.
Sometimes that's what the job takes, right?
Right. And it's like, it's got to happen.
Yeah.
So,
dude, good for you.
Well worth it.
What a cool story. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Any final thoughts or comments?
Man, I would just say, so first, this is incredible. Like, I know we've been talking about this podcast and this vision, this dream, and to see it actually come to fruition. I think there's so many people who have a lot of great ideas and they want to do good things.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just doesn't leave the paper, right? And the execution.
It's really easy to leave it on the paper.
Yeah. And to see this come to fruition and to actually see it live, I think it's really cool. So
thanks, man.
Cheers to you for that.
Hey, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to have you on. And thanks for all the things that you're doing, innovative and leading and coaching and helping develop people and systems to make this a better industry, make this a better place to do business. So we'll have Eric's contact information. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. And thanks for tuning in for another edition of Lenders Gone Wild. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.